Iowa Coalition Against Domestic Violence, and I will be moderating the webinar today. Before we get started, just want to review a few housekeeping items and let you know how you can participate in today's session webinar. I've taken a screenshot here to show you an example of the interface, or you should have your interface available. You have the option of raising your hand. If you have a question during the presentation, go ahead and raise your hand. I'll try to get to you. If not, you can ask that question at the very end. There'll be about a 15-minute Q&A. So if you have a question, feel free to ask it at the end. If you can hear my voice, then that's good. Is everybody able to hear my voice? If you can hear my voice, please go ahead and raise your hand. You should be able to click and raise your hand. There we go, Jenny. Thank you, Jenny. And then you can just put your hand down again. Mary, good. We got Mary. So if you can hear my voice, that's good. If not, you should have an option where you can call in, and that should be on the webinar welcome or the email that you received. But again, we will be recording this. Thank you, Emily. So we will be recording this so you can review it at a later date. You also have the ability to, like I said, ask questions using the question pane. The raising of the hand will let me know that you have a question. At the end of the presentation, we're going to do a Q&A, and it's about 15 minutes long. Before we start, are there any questions from anybody in attendance? If you have a question, go ahead and raise your hand. Okay, no questions. You should have 3 handouts. You should have the MVS webinar PowerPoint. You should be able to view that also. And then there's the Meskwaki powwow poster PDF. And then Dara has some suggested readings that she will discuss later in the presentation. So I'm actually going to ask Dara and Kim to introduce themselves, and they will actually take over the webinar. So Dara, I'm going to give you control here in a second. Okay, you should have control now, Dara.
Okay. Can you see the PowerPoint? Everything's good?
Yep.
Okay. So good afternoon. We're Meskwaki Victim Services. I'm Dara. So just a quick disclaimer about our presentation. This presentation is based only on my personal experiences, research findings, and acquired knowledge from others, and I serve as a Native American woman, not as an expert in this topic. So again, I'm Dara Jefferson. I'm a victim advocate. I am an enrolled Northern Arapaho tribal member and a Meskwaki descendant. I'm originally from Ipiti, Wyoming. It's located in the Wind River Indian Reservation. And with me, I have...
Hello, I'm Kim Clare. I am the program coordinator. I've been working for the tribe for about 5 years now. I originally came from Garrison, Iowa. I am a licensed independent social worker, so that kind of helps a lot in our work.
So just a little bit to familiarize yourself with, or familiarize you with our program. So we're a tribal program, which means we're under the leadership of the Sac-a-Fox Tribal Council. And the council has an executive office which oversees tribal operations and their services. Our director is actually the director of the family services, so that's our parent program. And in our building, we have 5 other programs. So we have the victim services, we have child welfare, protective payee, child care, and our ICWA. Kim can tell you about Meskwaki Family Services a little bit.
Yeah, so when this all started, Meskwaki Family Services was the primary people that wrote the first grant that was enabled them to hire me. So I kind of just moved into their office with them. It worked out good because our first grant was only serving sexual assault survivors, and they already had a lot of the children that they worked with that were survivors. So I could easily just kind of learn that business and go with the kids to CPC and stuff like that. We've kept our partnership here for 5 years it really does seem to work. Sometimes there's a little bit of pushback on the fact that we're in with child welfare because, you know, survivors don't always want to be around people who potentially could be the ones taking their kids away if something went wrong, right? So we're willing to meet them anywhere else. They don't have to come here, and we work really hard at keeping that separate. So the child welfare program, there's 2 social workers right now plus the director. They work side by side with the state of Iowa. They are, so when someone calls in a child abuse report, they call it into the state just like they would any other place. And then they automatically have to call Meskwaki Family Services. That's part of the law. So DHS doesn't come out onto the settlement without a child welfare social worker. So that kind of all works out together. And then once it gets that far, then our social workers take over the case. So the Department of Human Services is out of it after that, if it's an enrolled, qualified child for the tribe. A little bit about our program. So as I said, it started back in September of 2010. I was hired to just basically write the program and get it up and running for sexual assault. Then, well, they actually wrote the program in September 2010. I was hired in February 2011. In 2012, we were able to write another grant through the federal system and add DARA. So then we added domestic violence survivors as well. We provide all the services that everyone else does. So we have a 24/7 crisis line. We do emergency crisis assistance, medical and legal advocacy, direct support. We do individual, family, and group counseling, transportation if it's necessary, services. Our outreach and prevention is pretty extensive. We work a lot with the kids here on the settlement. And we are available for educational presentations and community events.
And a little bit about the Meskwaki Nation. So the tribe has a little over 1,400 enrolled tribal members, and not all of them, but most of them reside on a Meskwaki settlement in Tama, Iowa. And in addition to Meskwaki tribal members, there are about 500 other Native Americans living on the settlement. So those are people that have married to somebody who's Meskwaki, or maybe just descendants who aren't enrolled but live here, and stepchildren, stuff like that. Just depends. Meskwaki own over 8,000 acres of land in central Iowa. It's called a settlement because they own the land, and where a reservation is like where the federal government holds title to the land on behalf of the tribe. So they bought a certain amount of acres a long time ago. Iowa sold it to them, and then they've just kind of been buying land ever since. And now we're up to over 8,000. We still buy some here and there whenever they can. We're always growing. On the bottom of the screen, you'll see some of our tribal programs. So we have tribal operations. That's kind of like our HR, enrollment office, finance office, our executive management. What else is over there? IT. And then we have our hotel and casino. We have our own police department. We have our own tribal court. We have our own settlement school. We have our youth development program, higher ed, family services. So that's in the building that we're at. We have our own housing program. The Meskwaki Wellness is like our own gym, like a small gym. Economic development, health clinic, our MADAC, which is the alcohol and drug center. And then child support services. Those are only some of the programs that we have. We have a lot more. So there are about 567 federally recognized Indian nations in the United States. 229 of those are located in Alaska, and the others are located in 33 states. The total of American Indians, or Alaska Native population in the United States today is 5.4 million, so roughly 2%. In just a few years that I've been doing this PowerPoint, or using this PowerPoint, I've updated it just to do this one, and I've already seen the number increase. So that's kind of good to see. And there are 326 Indian land areas in the United States. and we're all different. It really depends on where we're from, what area we're from, or where we're migrated from. So in Iowa, there's about 14,742. The largest populations, you can see, if this map is kind of blurry, but you can still see where the bigger, I guess, these little land areas are. So Tama County and Polk County and Woodbury. Some of the other tribes in Iowa would be like the Winnebago tribe in Omaha, but the Sac and Fox Nation is the only resident tribe in Iowa, so we only want to have land. And there are Native Americans or those who identify as being Native American in every county in Iowa. Or so I've learned.
So this is kind of to identify so many differences in each different tribe, and why we, feel it's so important to have culturally specific programs. Dara often tells a story about when she was in the Army.
Oh yeah. So it's always good to see other Native Americans, especially if they're seeking help. It's something, and definitely seeking help is something that we have to learn how to do. It's not something we kind of come about naturally. So when we see a familiar face, it makes us feel better. So when I was in the Army, then I was always by myself. I was usually the only Native American, and so if I see another one, we're usually really happy to see each other, just because it's something familiar, and I don't know, I don't know how to put it. But another thing that we'll know for being a culturally specific service is the differences in Native American tribes and how we're all different, how we all speak different languages. Even from these pictures, these are all different tribes for the most part. You can notice that even our hairstyles are different. There's Hopi, Navajo, Lakota, and then just everything about us is different, from our clothing styles to our histories, our backgrounds, where we come from.
We've had programs ask, will you guys make a bunch of the dream catchers? And Dara's like, that's not really something Meskwaki do so much. So it's kind of interesting to see how many differences there really are.
Even our creation stories are different if you go from region to region and tribe to tribe, and our beliefs. And it really depends on where the person is raised to, whether you're from a reservation or a city. They have a bunch of different backgrounds there. If you come from a tribe that gets per cap, from a tribe that doesn't get per cap, and so a per cap is a monthly payment made in numbers usually, and then the amounts differ from tribe to tribe. Some are really low, and those tribes probably get just natural resources and stuff like that. The money's from that. Other tribes have casinos, and some have really big casinos, so they get bigger payments. And it really depends on that, kind of how that affects your life.
So these are a small list of people we work with a lot. We have a SART team, and that's really been good since we started working with Access in the last couple of years. When we tried to just do it here on the settlement, we just really didn't have the resources and the buy-in that we needed. So it's been really great since Access has included us in their SART team. Girl circles, we've been doing that for a couple years now. We have two groups going. One is 6th through 8th grade girls, and that's between 8 and 12 girls show up once or twice a month. And we have curriculum we bought from One Circle Foundation. It's really a good fit, I think. It has a pretty good structure. They'll use a talking stick, and they set up kind of their own routine, so every group's kind of the same, but just with different content. Those girls have really formed a close bond in the last year. We're actually taking them on a trip Saturday to the Mall of America. They did some fundraising and earned some of their own money, so we get to have fun with that. The other group is older girls, 9th through 12th grade. That's been a little more difficult to get a bunch of girls in. I've had 2 steady ones all year, and I don't know. I don't know if it's just the age thing or what. We just got to keep strategizing to get more girls to come to those. After school program at the settlement school, I've been doing that since I started, so 5 years now. We go usually twice a week during the school year. We work with that program coordinator and we set it up so it's varied. Like sometimes we'll have all girl groups, all boy groups, and we'll divide them down by grades. So it can be all the way from first graders to 6th graders. This past year we just had 6th graders, and the first half of the year we had the boys or the girls, and the second half of the year we had the boys. And we worked on some fun curriculum, like learning about forensic science, which was pretty fitting to our program. It really is just getting in there and hoping that they get to know us and know it's okay to talk to us and it's okay to work in groups, so that when they get older that they feel that we're a viable resource for them if they need it. And I think that works. I think when they see us in the community, we're very familiar to them, and I don't think they would be afraid to call us even if their friends were in trouble or stuff like that. The next one Derek can talk about.
Coaching boys into men. I've been working with the Meskwaki program for the last 2 years on that. With the Meskwaki Inferno, which is a youth football program. It's been pretty good. It gets better every year. We recently had Ben from Cedar Valley Friends of the Family come and speak to our coaches, and I think they really got some good information out of that. They really seem to want to be more involved and see themselves as role models and stuff. It's just kind of building their self-esteem too, to be able to run the program and incorporate the Coaching Boys into Men curriculum into their program. So I'm hoping to see that get better and better every year. And then with our culturally specific program tour, we haven't done one this year, but the last 2 years we've gone around Iowa and did a tour with the other culturally specific programs in Iowa, so like Monsoon, Luna, Amani, Deaf Iowans Against Abuse, Transformative Healing, and NISA. This year we're kind of depending on these webinars to get our information out, and we're also teaming together to do like awareness boosts and stuff, and really meet all the time. We see each other every networking meeting, and we have a lot of communication through email, so really just try to work on different things and different events to get us out there so other people can see us and know that we're here. We do a lot of other collaborations with many other programs.
And the circles too, just kind of a note, that took off as far as the youth program coordinator went and got that same training to facilitate those groups. And now he's doing young men's boys council groups. So that has really taken off here, which is really exciting.
Dara and Kim, we have a question from Fatima. Fatima,
okay.
Go ahead with your question. Fatima? Okay. Can you see the question? I can't see it.
I can't see anything.
Okay, we'll just go ahead, we'll just continue with the webinar.
So okay, those are just some of our collaborations. We have many others, but we didn't want to spend too much time on that. We're going to go into some challenges that we meet. And Kim was going to go ahead and go into that.
So culturally, some of the challenges I've seen since I've been here, and they kind of repeat themselves. Medical, I'm big on, let's go see a therapist and decide if you have depression and maybe use medicine. And a lot of times I get pushback on that. Nobody's like, we don't like to use medicine. We don't want to do it that way. They want to do more of their traditional stuff. And I agree to that too, but sometimes I just try to educate as best as I can, and if they're not going to agree with that, then that's okay. I have to move on. Working mistrust is a big deal. way bigger than I think I thought when I first started working here. And it makes more sense to me the more I learn. You know, there's been that mistrust between the government and Native Americans since way back, you know, and then that really carries on. Some examples I've had is like with kids, teenagers going to like residential treatment, and I've had their parents and their grandparents say, you know, that's just like the boarding school stuff. Why would you do that to them? You know, that's not what we want for our kids. And so having to try to learn and understand where they're coming from with some of that has been a challenge. Let me see. It's a small community, so that has its own, you know, everybody knows everybody, and you have to, you know, really be careful about conflicts of interest and keeping those lines and boundaries drawn.
I think asking for help in general is, like I mentioned before, it's not something that we just naturally do. It's part of it's mistrust, and some of it seeing it as being weak. I guess talking about different things and showing your emotions. We try not to get too emotional. Some of us are just quiet by nature and we don't talk, period, or talk outside of the family. A lot of them believe they can take care of things inside the home, or you know, if somebody, like if your partner hits you, you know, then you can just go tell somebody in your family, then they'll go and beat them up. We have a lot of that stuff going on, and that's just how things are taken care of. So they try to keep it within the family and the community. They just really don't have a lot of trust in systems. And Kim mentioned it before that just us being in with family services is sometimes a challenge. We always try to encourage them to come see us, you know, and let them know that we don't share our cases with the social workers. We try to keep everything separate. We have our confidentiality. So really just try to get them to come to us, regardless of the building that we share, you know, with the other programs. Other stuff is just, you know, like economic status, like even just getting, our building is kind of far out here, so just getting out here is sometimes a challenge for them. So we always try to let them know that we'll pick them up or we'll meet them where they are, and even if we have somewhere and, you know, have somebody in Des Moines or Cedar Rapids or Iowa City, we'll go to wherever they are if they want us to go there. Or else we could just continue to conversate over Facebook or text or on the phone. A lot of it, we have a big housing issue, I think. We get a lot of homelessness, although they don't consider themselves to be homeless because they'll just move from one family member's home into another or into a friend's home. But I mean, if they didn't have that, where else would they go? So we have that's always a problem here.
It's rare in my 5 years that too many people have actually gone to shelter. Yeah.
About these years, I think we've only had 2 actually go to shelter.
So they definitely, that is not the best option for them most of the time. Economic status, I think some of the barriers are because the tribe has a per cap. There's a lot of discrimination based on that. You'll get like, you know, like, why do you think they're eligible for this or that? They get their per cap. You know, you get that kind of attitude a lot. So when you're trying to collaborate and work with other programs, that can be kind of stressful, you know. It's like, just because they get per cap doesn't mean they're not eligible. You should at least do the math and not be so judgmental like that, you know. I think we try really hard to work through that, but it's going to take a long time because that's been going on for a long time, so.
And you have a lot of other things tied to it, like, you know,
politics and
racism and different things that we have to work through before we even start working with this.
I was able to get into the schools in town this year, and that's because we have a liaison for the school that is for Meskwaki kids. So just through that connection, I'm able to go to the South Tama schools one day a week and work with kids individually for the entire day, and that's like at the middle school, the high school, and their alternative school. So to me, that's a huge achievement because it's something in town, you know, it's that first door open maybe.
Kim or Dara, I do have a question. In terms of reporting, what barriers do you see around reporting?
families are so interconnected that, you know, if somebody reports, then they're maybe afraid the whole rest of that family system is going to be mad at them for getting, you know, that person in trouble.
Or retaliation from other families.
Yeah. Not believing is huge, you know. I don't know if that's like a self-protective factor because you are so close in this community. You know, a lot of times it's like, he would never do that, you know, or she would never do that. So, and that's like really deep ingrained in them that, you know, and it's hard to change those beliefs, really hard. What else?
Other than that, just everything else that we already covered.
Yeah.
So grown-up Native American, like I said, it could be different for every individual. I myself, I grew up on a reservation, so I grew up around a lot of other Native Americans, mostly from my own tribe. I spent summers in Tama, so I got to know a lot of my mom's side, which is, you know, she's Meskwaki, so she's from here. But we grew up around powwows, like that's what this little girl is doing, she's dancing. And a lot of kids that grew up in these communities grow up kind of dancing. At least their parents usually try to get them into it, and then if they stick with it or not is their own choice. We have a lot of big Indian families, and we have generations. So like I knew when I was growing up, I had my great-grandma and my grandparents and all my aunties and uncles and all my cousins, and we'd always hang out. So we have a lot of big families. We normally stick to, you know, like our reservations. Like if I wasn't in Tama, this is where my mom is from. If I wasn't here, I'd probably be back in Wyoming doing some kind of work. We have Indian schools, so I grew up, most of my schooling was done in Indian schools. So I went from Wyoming to Indian, and then I went to 2 different boarding schools. A lot of other Native Americans are like that. If they grow up in Native communities, they usually go to Native schools. In Tama, we see a big number going to South Tama, and that's just kind of the norm. It's always been like that. Our settlement school used to only go up through elementary or junior high, to SCC for junior high and high school. And now that we have our own, you just kind of still see that split down the middle on the settlement. And we just grew up knowing where we came from and who our families were. And, you know, like my family keeps our family tree all the way back to probably when we first start, I don't know, migrating even, before that. So it really helps for those of us who have grown up there to know where we're from and be comfortable with our identity, I guess. We have like our ceremonies, like right here is our teepee. This right here, I would say, is the POD meetings. We incorporate our culture into modern events. So like this graduation down here, that's my old high school, and that's the graduating class. We have ribbon shirts and traditional wear and outfits. So like the jingle dress right here, and then another traditional dress right here. And those are the styles of dance too. So like jingle dress and traditional, those are different styles of dance that you'll see at a powwow. Even right here, we have a fancy dancer, traditional dancers. This is a traditional right here, another traditional. So we get to grow up around this kind of stuff, and we're familiar with it. But then there's other Indians that grow up in cities too, and don't get that close at home. We have our language immersion programs that we have in Indian schools, or on certain, like, so my reservation had it, and then Meskwaki has it. It's a language immersion program. So like they're in the Meskwaki school, we have the 3-year-old and 4-year-old programs that only use Meskwaki language during those 2 years to try to get the children to learn more of their language. That's another thing about being a federally recognized tribe, is we have to have our own language, and a lot of tribes are losing that. So we're trying to think of ways that we can continue to keep our languages alive and, have our children learn it. Another belief is when we pray, our Creator only or can understand our language. So for some tribes that could be a major thing to lose their language. So So we're continuing to keep our identity, raise our kids with, our ceremonies and our beliefs, and tell them our stories. And you have anything else there? And then these are just some of the pictures of, recent activists. I don't know if some people keep up with the news, but they have different groups that have rallies and stuff in malls and whatnot. So this is just pictures of that. And again, we're Meskwaki Victim Services, and we will now take some questions. I believe, Charles, you had some?
I do, Dara. I do have some questions. How are DV and SA issues addressed or handled by the tribal court, and are there any difference in the legal proceedings versus a traditional court?
So DV and sexual assault issues are handled by the tribal court through the use of civil protection orders and hearings. Meskwaki Victim Services Office is notified when there's a DV or SA hearing, so we can be present and offer services. They focus primarily on the use of restorative justice practices, and emphasis is placed on restoring balance to the community, repairing relationships, encouraging fairness, and avoiding principles of retribution and punishment. Ultimately, the tribal court is a problem-solving court.
So when somebody is charged and sentenced for the tribal court, and then they can also be charged and sentenced at a traditional court, correct?
Yeah.
Yes, that is possible right now.
Yep. And do there if somebody is charged and convicted of either if it's domestic violence or sexual assault crime, do their crimes usually run concurrent with one another, or you serve time for the tribal conviction and then you serve time for a traditional court conviction?
That's a good question. I would say it wouldn't necessarily be concurrent. I'd say it could happen, but not necessarily.
So they'd have to serve the time for the tribal conviction, and then they would be remanded over to the state?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we've seen some people transferred from county to county too. So they'll serve some in this county, and then they'll go to, if they're wanted or they have time in Marshall County or any other county, they get transferred there and they do their time there. It really depends on, I suppose, their charges and
where they're at.
Yeah, where they're at.
Is there a maximum amount of time that a tribal court can imprison someone or put somebody in jail for a crime?
Yes. At this time, Meskwaki is able to give 1 year per felony. So that's like the lowest, there's a process that they have to go through in order to get it up to 3 years, and I don't think they're there yet. And then it would be 3 years per felony, but we're not even that far yet.
I have another.
Usually go to federal court if anything major happens on Indian land. So here on settlement or on reservations, they usually go to federal court, so they can get more time.
Okay. Do you guys think there's any perceived or culturally perceived reasons around DV and SA in the Native American population? And when I say that, I mean external perceptions or things that are perceived outside of the culture as to why DV or SA happens within the Native American population?
Well, I would say the number one thing would be, Native Americans are perceived as being alcohol addicted, and so that would be a number one thing that we hear a lot. We, of course, all know that alcohol is not a reason for that, and we educate every chance we get on that.
And that's
the main one I can think of right now.
And that's typically an outside perception, correct?
Oh, I don't know. It might go inside too, depending on, education level and ability to have an open mind.
And what is the prevalence of human trafficking in the Meskwaki Nation, or just in general with the Native Americans?
Well, for us right here in Meskwaki, I mean, I don't see it as a huge deal right now. I know that it is a lot bigger, like in Minnesota, and all the major cities, just like anywhere else. A lot of good material out there on human trafficking and Native Americans. Here, I mean, we do have a little bit of travel plaza that's been put in, and the hotel. We need to actually sit down and work really hard. That's kind of on our to-do list. We have had a few, or one anyways, that actually it was more made a boyfriend, had ended up like meeting someone in a different state and going there under the pretense that it would be her boyfriend, took a child with her, and it ended up in a really seriously trapped type situation. She was able to eventually get away and come back home, so that was good, but that's the only serious case I've ever actually had to work with.
Kim, would you say that the prevalence is more towards labor trafficking or more towards sex trafficking?
I would say sex.
Okay. Does anybody else, we'll go ahead and open it up to, we've got about 15-20 minutes for Q&A. Does anybody, any people in attendance have a question for Dara or Kim? Go ahead and raise your hand and we will open your mic. Again, if you have, anybody has a question, any of the attendees have a question for Dara or Kim, go ahead and raise your hand and I will open your microphone to them. No questions.
I can go through our, like I did earlier, or the previous webinar, and go through the website if you wanted to learn anything more about the Meskwaki Nation.
Yeah, go ahead and briefly go over the website and then your suggested readings list maybe too, and then we'll wrap up the webinar.
Okay. So this is the website for the Meskwaki Nation. We'll have all of our programs listed right here if you wanted to learn anything more. We're here under Family Services. So that's our building. You can learn all about the other programs that are in this building with us, and here's our program. We have a Facebook. You can go to there, and then just all of our names and our titles, how to contact us, and then house services, human resources, and our links. These are all of our other enterprises throughout the tribe. So we have our casino, our gaming commission, our tribal court, and they just now redid their website, so they're pretty proud of it. You can go over here and find a little bit more information on them. And then our settlement school, Meskwaki Inc. And this is the one. I think it's pretty interesting. I just now go through it myself once in a while just to remember what kind of programs we all have. If I can move this.
Dara, is this new? I don't remember seeing this last time.
No, I went through it last time. I went through, these are all the tribally owned companies that we have right now. Some are just barely starting, some are still growing, or they're all still growing. But so just recently we got a new travel plaza, and it has a diner. We have our own construction company. This, I believe they just now had a contest for artwork to make blankets and stuff. So some of them are just now starting, and like a lot of this stuff you can find in the travel plaza if you wanted to go there and get some of these items. Are usually sold there. And then
Meskwaki Inc. is where the old travel plaza used to be, the old gas station. They redid that whole building for the business people. It's pretty neat.
And so this is our community impact, just how much money they've made so far, how much employees they have. And this is just for this program. So just the Meskwaki Inc. So they have 82% that are Meskwaki, 3% are other natives, and 15% are non-native. And then economic self-sufficiency is our goal, and I think that's the goal of a lot of different tribes. We have like our own farms, and we have our own casino, and we have our own, court and police force, and our schools, and we're growing our own buffalo, and we're doing a lot of different things just so that way we don't have to depend on outside sources for this. I'm trying to get our own revenue going, and we already have our own revenue going, but just trying to make more, so we don't have that dependency on anybody else. Applications, if anybody wants to apply for them. And our powwow association, I know on one of the handouts is the powwow flyer, so if you guys want to come and see our annual powwow, it's definitely a sight to see. I go there every year. Practice line. Okay. And guests are always invited to come, like the public. It's open to the public. You can come eat and come watch. It's a lot of traditional dances, a lot of different powwows. If you see them, are contest powwows, so people go there to dance and compete against each other for a certain amount of money. Ours, we'll have some contests throughout the powwow, but ours is a lot of traditional dances, and some of them you can only see during that powwow, so a lot of people really enjoy it. As far as the readings, let me see. So I think, well, I really love them all. I think I've read them, I don't know, each several times. But the most recent ones I've read were the ones by Kent Nurburn, and I really, really suggest you read it. It's about he's traveling with an old man, and if you read it, you'll see that the old man's opinions of how Indians are perceived in modern time are true. I mean, it's just how we feel and what we think. He really gets it well on paper. And then Pointing with Lips is a story about a week in the life of a res chick. And I think growing up on a reservation, I can see how that story was similar to maybe somebody I may have known or myself, or just a lot of similarities that you see. And a lot of reservations have the same problems, and you'll see it in this book. And then this one I think has a lot of humor, but it's really good. And I'm still actually in the middle of this one, the Lakota woman. But so far it's been pretty good. It's still hanging out in my purse somewhere. But I think if you really want to know anything about Native Americans, and doesn't have to do with statistics, but just kind of how we think and the way we live our life, I would read these books.
Awesome.
Anything else?
No, I think we're good. If we don't have any other questions, do we have any other questions from our attendees in the webinar? If you have a question, go ahead and raise your hand. Okay, if we have no other questions, I want to thank Dara and Kim, and I want to thank everyone for attending today's webinar. If you have any other questions, please contact Dara and Kim. You see their contact information there, their email and their phone number for Meskwaki Victim Services. Once you leave today's webinar, you'll receive a survey on the presentation. Myself, Dara, and Kim would really appreciate it if you'd be able to complete that for feedback. You'll also receive a follow-up email within 24 to 48 hours with a link to view the recording of today's webinar. Again, I want to thank Kim Clare and Dara Jefferson from Meskwaki Victim Services. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.